Welcome back to another video of Sons of the Solar Empire 2 featuring the Visari Alliance. Today we are going to go over the Jarrasul Evacuator, commonly referred to by the players in the community as the Egg. For Visari, this is the capital ship you start the game with. You do not get a choice. So because it's, I would say, the most critical one in our arsenal, I think it's the best one to know the ins and outs of as a ship. It starts with 1480 shield, 935 armor, and 4655 hull points. You do get 99 extra shield points per level, 63 armor points per level, and 352 hull points per level of the ship. Has 108 armor strength, meaning that essentially when armor is being shot, you have roughly 600 durability. Something that's shooting at you with 500 pierce will do half damage to you while armor is being attacked. On the ship, there is one light wave cannon with an 8.2 DPS. It starts with 8 DPS. In this game I'm in, Visari does get bonus weapon damage for tier 1 and max hull points for tier 2. I was trying to level it quicker so we could talk about all the little things about it as it levels up. But it does have a light wave cannon, which I believe is front mounted down here. It's got a little bit over 180 degrees on either side, and it is mostly front facing, but you do notice you have to see the bottom half of the ship for it to shoot. So for the most part, this will shoot anything in a horizontal plane of itself in the front half of the ship. Second one is the beams. This ship has 4 beams, 2 top mounted and have quite a turning radius, and then 2 on the bottom side mount. This one also has a good radius. This ship is actually quite good at focusing its beams towards a target on the front. So it will keep those beams going and do a significant amount of damage. And last but not least, this ship, unlike the Cortal Devastator that we reviewed yesterday, does have 2-point defense pulse guns that do 7.7 DPS and have 0 pierce. For the most part, what these are good at is clearing missiles while you're doing your early clears from the pirate factions that guard the planets. But it does do a little bit of extra DPS when you're clearing light frigates, or when you're clearing the guard of frigates or the siege ships from the gravity well. It does have one, before we move on, those 3 weapons each get a 0.3 DPS boost when you get a level up. I do have a level 8 here with no additional bonuses from research, and you'll see that we have a 10.4 DPS on the light wave cannon and the beam, and then a 9.7 on the pulse defense gun. Alright, it does have a bombardment beam with 5 DPS. You notice that one also goes up as you level up the ship. This one, I think it's a little bit slower, because you can see it's gone up 1.3 in 7 levels. So I would say that's roughly 0.2 bombardment damage per second increase as it levels up. This, as I said, it is the backbone ship in our fleet. So we do need to know what's going on with it. This ship, I would say, struggles from the fact that all 3 of the abilities are ones that you want to level. So we'll talk quickly about those. So the first one that we have is the colonize ability. Visari has, I would argue, the best colonize ability on its colonizing capital ship. The colonize ability gives you a free mining level on any planet that you capture. Now that it does have a reduction in cooldown, so the first level has a 2-minute cooldown, and all of them have the same range, and levels 2 and level 3 also cost less. So for level 1, it's a 2-minute cooldown at 120 antimatter and 1 free mining level. Level 2 is 90-second cooldown, 90 antimatter cost, and 2 free mining levels. And then level 3 is 60-second cooldown with 60 antimatter cost and 3 mining levels. Why it's important that we get extra mining levels early in the game, Visari, when they're capturing those first levels of colonies, you can actually, if you have level 2, you would automatically get all of the mining on a volcanic. If you do get a primordial, if you have level 2, it actually bypasses the hard stop that the planet has on it. So for example, let's see if I can find one. I think I upgraded those on accident. Yeah, so usually you can get 1, I think it goes up to 2 on a nice planet, but something like a primordial, or even once you get into some of the tier 2 planets like the Terran, or the Oceanic, or the Desert, you can bypass that first level of the required mining. So it is a nice to have skill leveled up. And as I said, we do kind of suffer of a everything is good. The second one we're going to go over is the Gravity Warhead. This one scales quite well the higher up in levels you go. The first rank has a 96-second cooldown, 6600 range, a 120 antimatter cost, minus 24% max speed on the target, a radius of 3000, and a duration of 24 seconds. The only thing that stays the same as you level it up will be the radius. Everything else on this list becomes an improvement. So it goes from cooldown of 96 to 84 and then to 72. Range goes from 6600 and then increases in range by 1200, so maxes out at 9000 range. Antimatter drops by 30 antimatter per level, so it goes from 120 to 60. Max speed changes by 24%, so you have minus 24%, minus 48%, and then minus 72%. And duration also increases from 24 all the way up to 48 at level 3. So this skill it does slow all targets in the radius when you hit them. Here's the radius here. It is not a apply in the zone and then stays there. Everything that is in that radius when it shoots gets the debuff. It also does prevent them from jumping out or from phase jumping out of the gravity well as well. So this is arguably we'll call it our stun to prevent ships from jumping out. Other factions such as the Marza get a stun. The Advent get the Radiance, and they can use their taunt essentially to keep all of our frigates in the zone or in the gravity well, so you can clear them out. And we get Gravity Warhead. So this one will be the bane of some of the enemies that you fight, especially when they're trying to run and they know they can't. And arguably, I would argue this is probably the most critical skill on this ship. The final basic ability we have is Subspace Rupture. This one is also a good skill, and it is our only area of effect basic skill. We do not get a Radiation Bomb or a Plasma Nova or Fury of the Unity like the other factions do. So when it comes to AoE damage, this is our only AoE damage. It does increase the damage taken by the enemy if the Gravity Warhead is applied to them. So you can see how right now they have the same size. That will not change. They both always have 3000 radius. One thing I forgot about Gravity Warhead. The application shot has to be a straight shot, which is more or less this reticle here. So if your target is not directly in front of you, your egg will start trying to turn to capture or to catch a ship to hit this with. Stuff like the Advent Tempest, if it is kiting around your ship and your ship can't turn to apply it, you just won't be able to. I've seen some people say that they've successfully been able to quickly cast on something as it crosses over the front of the ship, but its application process is actually quite difficult. And as again, if it's something like a Corvette, it applies when it explodes, and everything in the explosion gets hit by it. It does not have a lingering effect. So if you shoot this and then something tries to cross through it, it will not get gravity warhead applied to it. Back to subspace rupture. It levels up with a 96-second cooldown and goes down to 84 and then 72. The range stays the same for all 3 levels. Antimatter cost, it gets cheaper with every level, from 120, then 90, then 60. And then the duration increases by 6 seconds at each level, from 30 to 36 and then 42. Damage without gravity warhead is 12, 15, and 18 damage. For a total of 360 damage at level 1, 540 at level 2, and 756 at level 3. With gravity warhead, it doubles all of those damages to 24 damage per second, 30, and then 36, for a total of 720 damage, 1,080 damage, and then 1,512 damage. As noted, it does have 0 pierce. That pierce does come into play quite quickly. Very specifically, even if you have a max level on subspace rupture and you hit something like a Garda frigate for the tech that has 100 durability, you are only doing 378 total damage without subspace rupture and 756 damage with subspace rupture. So the damage does go down quite significantly with durability. So placing this as more of a deterrent is more important, I would say, than actually getting the damage to apply. One thing that players at the upper levels will do is they will move their fleets out of subspace rupture. They will move out of radiation bomb. So all of those damage over time skills do essentially force the enemy to reposition their fleet. Especially when you target it in a location where it hits multiple ships at the same time. Everyone's looking for any advantage they can get to not take damage where required. That said, it will cause enemies to have to move their ships. Moving them takes time, and moving also means that they're potentially not shooting back at your own ships. So use this, I would say, more as a zoning tool rather than applying a lot of damage. And specifically, it will not do significant damage to capital ships. The final ability is Drain Planet. It is, I would argue this is probably the least useful skill on the ship. It does 900 damage in total over 30 seconds, and you drain 900 metal and 900 crystal from the planet while doing so. It has a 4-minute cooldown. The range is actually quite short, and especially after you take pinpoint bombardment to increase our bombing range, which is, I don't think I talked about that, which has 3,000 range. We end up at roughly 9,000 or 9,500 range bombing. So you would have to manually cast Drain Planet because your ship may not get in range to use it by itself, especially when you have the increased bombarding range. So again, this ship, we start with one. There's 2 ways I would say you can level it. Is you can either choose to go the colonized route and max colonization. As I said, once you get to level 5 with this ship, and you probably can get to level 5 by clearing a handful of planets all the way up. Once you get to level 5, you can have level 3 colonize stuff like the primordial. You can bypass one, or you can get the one for free, and then you can get the next 2 and essentially save yourself getting all the way up to primordial 3 here. Things like that. So it can give you a nice boost to our early game income. Other ways you can choose to build it. Obviously, you start with colonize so that you can capture the homeworld. The one thing that the alliance, that both Visaris do is the planet item comes on the capital ship, and when you capture your planet, the item gets transferred. Other factions, their first capital ship always starts with the return exotic. We do not have the ability to return the exotics from this ship if it dies. So if it dies, and it is quite slow with 600 move speed, I believe the Cortal yesterday we reviewed had 660. So this one is even slower than that. And if anyone knows this ship, it also turns extremely slow as well because it is a large ship. I think that's all I've got for the skills. So as I said, you can level colonize first if you choose. If you get a second or even a third one of these ships, I would say that the one that you want to prioritize leveling would be the gravity warhead. As I said, it increases the duration from 24 to 36 to 48 seconds, which is an eternity in this game. Even just having 2 at level 3, so you can have 2 eggs at level 5, you can keep gravity warhead applied to a fleet for forever. The duration and the cooldown would overlap, and you could keep a fleet from jumping out as long as your eggs are alive. Work as a mini phase gate, or not phase gate, phase disruptor. The other option, which I think a lot less people use, is leveling of subspace rupture. The level 1 of this does not do as much damage as either plasma nova or gravity warhead. Level 2, I believe, ties it with the 2 of them, and then level 3 slightly surpasses them. But as I said, because it has 0 pierce, it suffers from a damage reduction just from hitting things that have more durability. Ships that you can use this on include all of the corvettes. This is mostly our anti-corvette skill. It also is, you can probably use it on light frigates, and then I would say that something with 100 durability, such as the Garda, such as the, I don't even think that there's that many that have 100 durability. Canrex have 120. I think you could probably use it here. And then anything over 150, you use it out of necessity, but I wouldn't target those in particular, such as something like Tempests. Also because they'll move out of this as soon as they can. Alright, when it comes to consumables, the Nano Catalyzer Swarm is useful to have on it because you can apply it to a ally ship. If you do it manually, if you do it automatic, it will most likely cast it on itself because it has a 250 antimatter reserve, and just by casting the gravity warhead and the subspace rupture, you've used all but 10 of your antimatter. So it is a very hungry, or antimatter hungry ship, but you also probably have, I believe you have the antimatter regen of I think it's 1.2 at level 1. You will regen a good amount of your antimatter in between casts. So if you have the consumable on it and you have it on auto cast, it will probably use it on itself because it has used so much antimatter just casting these 2 skills. Second, I would say Nano Repair Swarm is one of the better items on this one as well. You can treat it as a support ship. It does not have phase missiles. It does have beams, and I talked yesterday about how beams are kind of our capital ship killing weapon, especially mid to late game, because most enemy fleets have enough point defense that any phase missiles that come out usually get shot down. So this is a supplementary damage. It will not reach the levels that the Devastator did in the video yesterday, but it's still, I would say that you want to use it as a support, use the nano repair swarm, keep both the armor points and the hull points up for whatever it is in your fleet that you're supporting. Nano attack swarm, I would say early game, having one of these on this ship at your first engagement can catch some enemies off guard. It deals a surprising amount of early game damage that you aren't usually expecting as a against a Visari. So unless the enemy has scouted this and they know it's coming, chances are you will catch them a little bit off guard. So the damage adds up. I would say this is an early game only application, and I would also say that you probably don't want to use this on autocast because it'll shoot at other ships that you don't want it to shoot at. If you do take the evacuator and right click on a target and have this on autocast, it will apply on the ship that you are shooting at. So if an enemy has a capital ship here and you're doing capital versus capital, with this on autocast, it will apply it to the target it's shooting at. Next up is the beam modulator. I did discuss the beams yesterday and how strong I think they are. Because late game damage for us is beam focused, this might actually be something that we want to pick up just to get that little bit extra damage. It does cost a red exotic, which we talked about yesterday. There's a number of weapons. I think all of our weapons require a red exotic, and then also the bomber armor requires a red exotic, which we're never going to get anyway. But either you're buying capital ships, or once you've reached that point where everybody's just kind of posturing for that last fight, maybe that one beam modulator does push you over the edge and killing a Titan or an enemy capital. But this is the only weapon that we have that does decent damage to capital ships. I do not think the wave modulator is something worth getting. You'll notice that our light wave cannon has 120 pierce. There are only a handful of ships that will pierce their durability. So even with the extra damage, even with the extra reload, I do not recommend getting the wave modulator. The only reason I would ever consider doing wave modulator is if in the next patch they remove the red exotic cost and it just costs metal and crystal, and doesn't require the the Tauronite. Then I might consider purchasing it, just because you're usually rolling around in money but not exotics. So that would be the only way I would ever recommend getting that. And then you can use this ship as you can use it to kill higher durability, or not higher durability, but you can kill the lighter durability ships quicker with it. But as I said, your beams, because there's 4 of them, they're doing about, what would it be, 33 damage per second on the beams, because you have 4 of them. So this would be the only ship weapon that I would recommend. But you're probably not going to be getting it, because this ship is extremely slow. It dies a painful death if you're not careful with it. Phase attenuated shield. I do think, again, in a Visari matchup, I think this is a required ship item on all of our ships. It is a tier 3 upgrade that it comes after the 2 shield regeneration upgrades. And again, because it is a 33% uptime, blocks all phase missiles for a full minute. If the enemy is heavy Canrack, which I'm going to say that they shouldn't be, or if the enemy is heavy Desolator, and shooting the phase missile swarm at you, this is what you're going to use to catch those and make sure you don't take any extra damage from that skill. Overall, I think it's a good item. I would actually recommend picking up one of those once you hit tier 3, just for any extra shield regen and any extra reduction in damage. It will auto activate on its own if you take any damage from any ship. So as soon as you take even just a cobalt shooting at you, it automatically procs the active. So you need to manually select it if you want to specifically use it just for phase missiles. Otherwise, if you leave it on auto, it's not the end of the world if you miss a couple seconds here and there of phase missiles coming through. But if you really want to get the best use out of it, make sure you manually cast it when you see a lot of phase missiles targeted at you. The self-repairing armor, I think, is always a good skill or a good item to have on your ships. It gives us armor regeneration in combat, and it increases our armor regeneration by 180%. It's roughly about 10 armor per second. I don't have exact numbers, but you end up getting, as I said, you end up getting 10 armor per second, and then there is an active on it that you restore 36% of your max armor. And it only works on your own ship, so you use it when you're getting lower, or you use it early on just so you can start the cooldown process, and it keeps you relatively healthy. Again, I think this is one of those best in slots. The things that are being competed for with this is the 1 that gets spent on a Desolator. I believe it's 2 that get spent on a Scarantra. Let me check that. Yep, the 2 on the Scarantra, the 1 on the Marauder, and then also on our Titan. And then everything after that is 2, I believe it's 2 levels of armor on our Starbase and the Planetary Shield Array. Starbases aren't really used in player versus player just because of the lack of range on them. And then other things I see in here, it might compete with space for the defensive uplink if you have a good choke planet. And it does compete with the flawless armor upgrade, which is right here. So you should actually have this item unlocked before then, but you'll need a Endurium at that point if you're still leveling it. And that's pretty much it, I think. Yeah, not too much takes Endurium for us. And when you do, it's usually just a one-time quick use it. Otherwise, we're using them for Scarantras to help keep our fleet alive through their active skills. All right, close that. Bomb armor, I briefly talked about it already. This is not a item worth getting. We do get a additional bomber when we hit level 4 and then level 8. So you start with 3 bombers. By level 8, you will have 9. Of those bombers, they have 5.5 DPS, decent armored, decent hull points. So it's just a little bit of extra damage that comes with our ship. Gravity Stabilizer. This is one that I actually do recommend. Your ship is so slow and turns so slowly that if it is not facing the correct direction when a group of frigates or cruisers come into a gravity well, chances are you are not able to run away from them. So getting this ship out, especially when it's usually the highest level capital we have on the first engagement, just because you start with it, might be something to consider doing even in the mid to late game. Just keeping this thing alive can prove helpful, especially if you have a lot of levels in Gravity Warhead or a lot of levels in Colonize. The resonance amplifier, I think I talked about it a little bit yesterday. I don't really see the point in using a kalinide on it. We do get the phase resonators and our phase resonance points. They last for 60 seconds as long as we have any of these down. This would bump us up from 60 to 180 seconds, but all you have to do is go up one more tier to tier 3, and then you still get it to 180 seconds, and then you get this again, and now instead of 180, in 3 minutes of time, you have 9 minutes of time. Very rarely do we spend 9 minutes as a Vasari in one gravity well, so I actually don't recommend picking that one up for really any ship as a Vasari Alliance. Last but not least is the antimatter recharger. I did talk about that one a little bit already the other day on the Cortal one. It does require a kalinide actually all three of these require a kalinide. These two require an Endurium, and then both of these require tauronite. We don't have any ship items that require any Anvar, but I think that's the case for most factions. The antimatter recharger has 96% antimatter regeneration. If you do quick math, I think the nano canalizer actually gives you a quicker regen than the antimatter recharger does. It's just whether or not you want to continue buying consumable items versus having a one-time antimatter recharger fire and forget. I don't like it on this ship. This ship usually doesn't have enough casting requirements that require you to or require that you start managing your antimatter. Usually Gravity Warhead is manually cast to make ships either not run or not be able to jump out, and Subspace Rupture is almost always manually cast as well, just because of getting the location right. So I would argue antimatter recharger is not one that we want to spend either of our 4 slots on, or a kalinide to provide. So early game, like I said, I like the nano catalyzer. I like the nano repair. For the first fight, you can have a nano attack swarm, and if you're already tier 3 when you get to that first fight, have the phase attenuated shield, just to have any additional shield regen on your ship. Mid game, if you are running on a lot of Endurium, grab the self-repairing armor, and if you are also get to Empire 3, I would say get the gravity stabilizer, and then drop out the nano attack swarm. So you would have late game, given unlimited resources, unlimited exotics, you'd have nano catalyzer, nano repair swarm, self-repair armor, and the gravity stabilizer. You could maybe drop, I would say probably the nano catalyzer for the phase attenuated shield. So nano repair, both of the defensives, and then gravity stabilizer. As far as synergy with other ships, or other capital ships in particular, the Cortal is nice to have with it because the Cortal does a lot of our damage. Getting a good gravity warhead on something keeps it in range of our Devastator, allows our Devastator to do a lot of extra damage. The Scarantra, we do have the nanite armor ability and the repair cloud ability. Both of those will help keep us alive, and then the other 2 skills, not as important. The Scarantra, you want to stay in the back. What usually ends up happening is enemy fleets chase after your Scarantras, and then once they've killed your Scarantras, because it's kind of slow on its own, what they'll do is they'll turn around and shoot at your Evacuator, because your Evacuator is usually still spinning in place trying to change its targeting by the time they've gone past and killed your carriers. The Antarac Marauder, getting the Distort Gravity will help speed up your ship. Something that we desperately need on our fleets, because we do have the slowest base move speeds of all the factions, but we have the most ways to also increase to then be the fastest of the rest of them once we get all of our upgrades. And then the Desolator, Getting the deploy siege platform, getting the assault specialization to bombard planets quicker does help. And with our drain planet, this actually drain planet, one thing to talk about is once you cast it, it will continue casting for the entire duration unless you manually stop, even if the planet has died. So it is a channeling ability. To stop your ship from using it, we actually have to physically click the stop button and then make the next order. Phase resonance for this ship in particular. This one, in a PvP standpoint, you actually do want the increase in max speed from the mobility tree. We get max speed down here for the first time because the first two are phase jump speed. I really do not like phase jump speed on our faction because we already have an increase in phase jump time, or reduction in phase jump time, and we get friendly gravity well increased speed of 180%. So the mobility gives us nothing unless we're jumping into an unfriendly well. Plus, it only applies for 60 seconds at tier 1. Usually this ship is still cruising across the gravity well when those 60 seconds are up. So we no longer have the mobility when we don't have the increased duration that we pick up in tier 3. So I do not like mobility myself unless you can get all the way up to the max speed. The max speed is really the only thing that may keep this ship alive. As far as combat goes, the weapon reload and the weapon damage is going to be nice on any capital ship and any frigate or cruiser. So if you are going heavy, I would say into stuff like the Canrack, going heavy into the skirmishers as well. It's a nice to have on this ship, but this ship is not applying most of its damage from actual weapons. What I will say is the best to do if you are going for a very capital heavy fleet is to get the utility tree. Even just the 12% antimatter reduction for this ship, you'll see that this drops it from 90 to 81, drops it from 60 to 54 because these are max level. But if we look at the level 1, it's 120 and 120, so you're saving 24 antimatter for the combination of gravity warhead and subspace rupture. Once you get higher up in the tree, you start to get the cooldown reduction. Cooldown reduction absolutely favors gravity warhead and even subspace rupture to a small degree, because as I said, everybody's moving out of the subspace rupture unless it's something like Harkas with Hashikos. Then there's no reason for them to get out of there. So having cooldown and reduction of antimatter costs is always a nice to have on this ship, although I wouldn't say it's a critical need for you. Really, for this ship in particular, and any ship in our faction, is if you can get up to the max speeds for mobility, do it. If not, you need to stay down in the low levels of combat and the low levels of utility. The other ship items from minor factions, I don't know if I got all of them here. The jump field stabilizer is good as a oh crap button on your ship. Quickly dispose of a consumable, put the jump field stabilizer on, and you will cut your phase jump charge time in half. I think it goes from I think it's 8, I think it cuts it to 4, something like that, or it's 10 and it cuts it to 5, so it's quite a good upgrade. Remote tachyon boost, if you can get all the way up to level 3 on the transport cabal, the tachyon boost may just save this ship's bacon someday. If you have to get it out, it's a 75% move speed improvement, and I think you also get a turn rate improvement as well. So it can either help close the gap in a fight, or it can get you out in a bad situation. Where's the other ones? The ability cooldown is a nice to have as well if you can get to 4 points on the Aluxians. The bonus ship kill experience is more of the okay, great, you've got it, but really we would want the ability cooldown again for gravity warhead. If you stack enough cooldown, you can basically just by yourself apply gravity warhead over and over against enemies. And then last but not least, this is a tanky capital ship, but because of how slow it is, chances are it's going to get into a fight that it doesn't want to be in, and it will start to die. Crippled hull can surprise an opponent that forces it to take a much longer time to kill off than it actually is. I think I said last time that crippled hull is all shield, armor, and hull added together. Did a little bit of testing, and I'm pretty confident it's just a secondary hull point bar, which hull is what this faction is known for, but essentially crippled hull will double the hull points required. Instead of 4655, it's a full double to basically 9,000, or in the case here of 7,195, it doubles it to 14,000 hull points that the enemy fleet has to chew through. We do also get in combat regeneration while the crippled hull is being shot. So having the hull regeneration and having this regenerative hull increased is sometimes worth it. It gives you that extra little bit of survivability. And then same thing with the shield regeneration, assuming you don't have reverse engineered shields. So that item by itself can also be quite good. As far as researches go, if you ever end up in tier 3 Empire, the unit build time can reduce. I believe that the build time is 75 seconds. I think it's for all of them. Yeah. So you can reduce it. That would make it a 20-second, roughly, build time reduction, which I think is the quickest any capital ship builds for any faction. And then we talked a little bit about phase resonance. Really, this ship of all of our capital ships needs the move speed, if you can get all the way up to move speed. If not, just grab the two, one in antimatter and one in combat. The phase jump charge time, because this ship is so slow, the phase jump charge time is nice to have as well. It will give us that little bit extra just to get out of a gravity well that we find ourselves in where it's a bad situation, or it helps us chase just that little bit more because of the ship being so slow. And then phase jump in friendly territory. This is nice to have to move our ships around quickly, keeps us in our territory, it lets us react to stuff that we weren't necessarily prepared for. For weapons, you can, once you get to tier 2, if you're getting a second one, getting the second generation crew is a good idea. We don't have a lot that we spend our Anvar on. Very specifically, I think it's you can use 2 to get another evacuator, use 1 on the Volcross, and then otherwise we aren't spending too much unless we can find exactly the Alliance Xeno Embassy, which is a tier 3 up here and only can apply to a couple planets. So chances are we aren't building too many of those. So if we get here and you're building a second one to get 1 level in subspace rupture and 1 level in gravity warhead right away, I do recommend getting that before you build the ship. Pulse weapon damage, I would say level 1 of the plus 6% isn't something you want to worry about. You do want to get to the second level of pulse weapons when you can get to tier 2. Tier 1 of 6% is really not going to give us too much. That's less than 6/10. So I would argue don't bother with it unless you've only built skirmishers and you need just that little bit of edge to win a fight. But the rapid pulse, once you get to plus 18, is definitely something worth picking up. Wave damage, you don't care about wave damage on this ship because it's 8.2 and it's only got 120 Pierce. So your point defense pulse guns actually combined, because there's two of them, will do more damage than your light wave cannon to most things. So we can skip over any desire to do any wave upgrades. The beams, I do recommend getting the intense beams. This is more of a support ship, but any extra damage is good. So getting the plus 24% beam damage is a nice pickup. Most games are over usually before you get to tier 4. So I would say that this is a luxury to have out here, but the acute beams would be good if you get to that point. You just have to be careful that once you're in range of beams, you're in range of stuff like, basically you're in range of enemy fleets as well. So you may die before you get too much damage off. We already talked about the weapons. The pinpoint bombardment damage, as I already talked about, it does increase your damage or your range from about 3,000, and it does move you outside of the range of Drain Planet. So if you have this on autocast, you will actually have to move your ship inward and manually cast this to get this to apply. We do like the precise turret servos. The range on the point defense guns is 6,000, which versus the beams or the light wave cannon is 250 below those two. So the pulse of getting an extra range and getting the increased tracking speed hopefully lets us clear corvettes out of the sky, clears fighters and bombers out of the sky. So we do pick it up if or when we can. It's a nice to have. I wouldn't say that this is something you immediately start to grab as soon as you hit tier 2. As far as the defenses go, we like all of them. We like the extra hull points. We like the extra regen. We like the self-repairing armor if we can afford them, if we have enough Endurium to afford one on this. We absolutely like the atomic engineering and the flawless armor because we need that turn speed and acceleration on this ship. We love armor restoration, anything to increase survivability of our ships, and again with any of the shield related items, we like all of those as well. So you should be picking all of these up anyway, just because a tankier ship is a ship that's still doing damage, whether it's an evacuator or not. Things you have to be careful of out of enemies, if you're fighting against another Visari, chances are that you're in a defensor war. So if they have a critical mass of defensors, you will be trying to hit subspace rupture where your defensors are fighting theirs. But once they hit a critical mass of defensors, they can absolutely chase your ship down, and there's little to nothing you can do about it. So you need to carefully position when you know the enemy is heavy and defensors. You have to be careful again if they're very heavy into skirmishers and you don't have a way to stop them. Canrax, you do have to worry about those. Canrax will absolutely overwhelm your point defense and kill you. So you do need to position carefully again for those as well. And the range on those will quite literally, depending on the well, will do a lot. Enemy bombers, you don't have a real good way to deal with bombers. They will outrun you, which is why I'm such a proponent of max move speed on this ship. Because it's one of the slowest in the game. So you need to also, you really need to be careful of any ships en masse against another Visari. Versus a tech player, you need to be very careful of the Gauss frigate. If an enemy gets about 30 of those, I think it's only about 4 or 5 volleys with those Gauss frigates, and you will be into crippled hull and doing next to nothing. Then they'll chase you down and kill your ship. So take care of those before you jump your capital ship in, unless you're preparing to lose it to whatever their target selection is. Also have to be careful for the long-range frigate for the tech. It does a surprising amount of damage, and it does shoot 4 missiles with every volley, which your point defense can handle 2 or 3, but any more than that, and you start not being able to handle the number of volleys that come through, and it will chew through you pretty quickly. Trying to think. Also, other things to be worried about with the tech is the Marza, with its concussion shot to stun you from jumping out. Usually this ship is the last ship that we have to get out of a gravity well, and if it's the last one to get out, it's the one that's going to get hit by the stun if the stun is ready. So same thing with Advent. Anything that can disrupt your jump will do it, especially because you're the last one out. You also need to be careful of enemy illuminators, especially when they start to hit the I'd say 30 or 40 illuminator mark. They can absolutely pierce through your ship, and usually about 3 or 4 volleys of those, and they have chewed through into your crippled hull. And then they'll continue to chase you and knock you out. So need to be careful, again, jumping into gravity wells with certain quantities of ships that can just absolutely destroy you. That said, I would say it's an early game ship. We want to colonize on it. If you're getting multiples of these, I recommend the first one. Go all the way into colonize. Especially if you start trading planets with somebody. Let's say you lose your primordial, then they jump over here, you come back, steal the primordial back, and then you can immediately throw a colonize on it. It'll automatically spike up your research. You don't have to spend, or not your research, your mining. You don't have to spend anything else to upgrade your mining. And then as long as even if you have it at level 3, you're doing pretty good. Second and third, and maybe even fourth, I would say 4 is probably the maximum that you would get ever of these. You either choose going on Gravity Warhead or Subspace Rupture. And I would also wait to get it after second generation cruise, unless you are going to use that second one to path in 2 different directions and colonize in 2 different directions. Then and only then, I would actually recommend that the second one start using the colony seed nanites, because you get 1 level of mining and 1 level of logistics instead of just 1 level of mining at level 1 and level 2. Again, it's a good ship. This isn't like the Devastator where we're filling our fleet with it. These have to be strategically used, strategically built, and strategically used in the large fights. But overall, I think it is a good ship, and definitely one we need to make sure that we keep alive when we're fighting against other players. That's all I've got. Thank you for watching the video. Look forward to more sins, and looking forward to the new patch. So hopefully not too much of what I said is moot in about 2 weeks. Catch you guys later.